Hi there, welcome to Race Centre. I'm Dazza, 2023 Triumph Thruxton RS. Cool bike. You might think it's a little bit different to what you might see here at Race Centre on the Dyno, but we actually do tune bikes like this, retro bikes and cafe races, tourers and all sorts of stuff. So this is a cool bike. I really like it. I must say, you know, if there's one thing our motorcycle world does a lot better than the car world, it's retro bikes. You know, the attempts that the car world have made at retro cars, some of them are pretty poor. Like, you know, I shouldn't say that pretty poor, but you know, they don't really embrace that retro style of them. These things do. There's plenty of examples out. Triumph have done a great job with the Thruxton. It's really cool. Love it. It's got a lot of modern technology on it, like ABS, traction control, shower big piston forks, Brembo brakes, Olin shocks here at the back. It's a really, really cool bike. They've even made the fuel injection system look like carbies. It's just cool. And you've got 3 power modes. You've got rain, sport, and road. And as I said, you also got traction control. Now, on the power modes, the thing you need to know with this bike is all power modes give you full power, right? So even in rain mode, if you go all the way to the stopper, you're going to get full power, right? All they do differently is deliver it in different ways. So please don't think, and Jarrah, this is your bike, don't think that if you want all the performance, you have to ride it in sports mode. I do encourage anyone with one of these to try the different power modes and use the one that's best for you, that you like the best. They've all got full power. If this was my bike, I'd probably mostly ride it in road mode. The sports mode's okay, but it's just, it delivers the power a little bit too quickly. So you've got to be a little bit more precise with your initial throttle application. So whether you're in the middle of a corner, you're going to pick up the throttle, you've got to be a little bit more precise. And you can potentially get a bit more of a jerky throttle if you hit a bump and so on. And it's just because it's giving you more power with smaller increments, right? So when you have one of those other modes, it's actually just giving you a bit of extra leeway so that you hit a bump and your hand moves slightly, it doesn't really jerk the bike. And you might think, well, I don't want a slower mode. I'm no loser that I'm going to ride around in a slower mode. You'll actually probably ride faster or be able to ride faster because you have more control. Think about it like as if it was a brake lever. If you want more brake, you just pull it harder. It's the same with the throttle. But if you had a brake lever that was so touchy that every time you went to touch it, it'd almost lock up the front, you'd be scared of the thing. It's no different with the throttle. So some bikes, you know, you've got to understand each bike, but this Thruxton will give you all of its power in all 3 modes. So if you have one, I really strongly advise you to play around and don't be shy of using the road mode and the rain mode because you actually might find you enjoy riding it more. So normally what we do with all bikes is we assess the throttle maps. So the throttle maps the connection between the twist grip and the throttle plates in those 3 power modes. Triumph have done an amazing job with this particular bike. We're not even going to modify them from standard. They're really, really good, and they give you 3 different, you know, 3 usable different power options. As I said, I probably wouldn't use sport because I like to have a throttle that gives me the feedback in a way that I like it in the smaller throttle positions so that I get a nice, real smooth throttle application. So again, I encourage you to try those. Then these bikes, Jarrah's had different aftermarket headers put onto the bike, let the bike breathe a little bit better. These bikes have a narrowband O2 sensor in the headers that adjusts what we call the closed loop area. So the closed loop area is the smaller throttle positions and in the and then in the lower RPMs. Now, interestingly, when Jarrah got his headers installed, it was at another workshop. Afterwards, he got the headers installed. It was like, oh, the bike runs really rough and runs a bit crap. So he booked it in for a tune. So we've gone through the bike, did our initial tune assessment, and straight away I was like, nah, something's wrong here. This, even though it's got new aftermarket headers and the exhausts have been allowed to breathe a lot better, the bike shouldn't be performing the way that it is. What was happening was that the number 1 cylinder or left cylinder was running really lean and the right cylinder was running really rich. It was just odd. And then But the thing was, when we just did initial assessment, it was very quick to work out, it was only in the closed loop area. So straight away, I was pointed towards the standard narrowband O2 sensors. And sure enough, what I found is where the shop where Jarrah had the headers installed had mixed them up. Now, the sensors themselves in the exhaust are exactly the same part. I'll get them. They're just right here, okay? So they're the exact same part, but where they plug into the wiring harness, or the main wiring harness of the bike, is really critical, because the bike, the wiring harness is then what tells the ECU, or the bike's brain, which exhaust it is. So if you get those the wrong way around, what happens is, or what was happening, so what's happening in the real world, this number one cylinder is lean, and we know that because we've got our dyno sensor in it, which is independent of the ECU. But the computer, the ECU of the bike, is actually saying that number two cylinder is lean, because that's what it thinks, because the sensors are plugged the wrong way around. So it's adding fuel via the injectors into number two cylinder, and that's getting richer and richer and richer. Conversely, it thinks number one's rich, so it's physically pulling fuel out of number one. And that's why when I saw on the dyno, they were massively different. So, Jarrah, that's the primary reason why it was running so bad. So, sorted that out so that we had a proper baseline to get all that done. And then we go about the tuning process. Now, Triumph, like I said, have done a great job with the throttle maps. They've also done a really, really, really good job with the tune out of the box. Because it's a new model, we weren't 100% sure, but the cylinders are actually tuned really nicely, so you don't need to do an individual cylinder tune on this bike. Some bikes like Ducatis and that, you absolutely have to, because they run so differently and you want to sort that out. Triumph done a great job. They both run really nice, so you could do a trim tune over the top of them if you wanted. In this case though, we've gone to the effort of putting both wideband O2 sensors and wideband bungs in it, so we're doing an individual cylinder tune anyway. The individual cylinder tune is better, not absolutely necessary, more time consuming, but we're there anyway, so we're absolutely doing it. And because it's a 2023 model, it's the first one that we've had, we need to know. So that's why we did it. We didn't just make an assumption, oh, it should be right, Triumph's normally right on this. You never know. So we've confirmed that. We've also removed the, as you can see, the narrowband O2 sensors. The reason we do that is they only work in the closed loop area anyway, and they're actually not as accurate as a wideband sensor. So you don't want, if you don't need it, you don't want this little guy in there making fuel adjustments on your bike based on what it sees. Especially over time, it may start to get a little bit worse. And if you've got a great tune in your bike and it's working great, and then years down the track it starts running rough, just means that it needs a proper service. It might need a fuel system service, like your fuel pump or your injectors or something like that. So your tune shouldn't go off per se. The tune should be right. And if it starts getting a little bit, running a bit differently, there's something else going on. So you might think, sure, well, the O2 sensor will correct the fueling there. You don't want it doing that. You actually want to resolve the core issue underneath it. So we've done that, did the assessment. As I said, the base stuff with Triumph is really, really good. Typically a little bit lean, particularly on the smaller throttle positions. We've corrected all that, got it really, really nice. We have made more peak power, so that's a good thing, but what you're really going to feel is that mid-range and just nicer connection and just smooth throughout the rev range. So anyone who's got one, this isn't a bike where I would say you need to have it tuned, Even if you were to put an aftermarket header on, depending on what it is, like if it's something crazy, then you would need to. In this case, with Jarrah's bike, if the O2 sensors were actually plugged in the right way, I wouldn't have said you need a tune. Definitely benefits from it, it's better, but it's not like the bike's going to be dangerous or run in too lean a condition. So if you've got one, don't need a tune. Obviously, we'd love you to get it tuned here at Race Centre, and it will benefit, but it's not something you completely need. So anyway, really cool bike, love it. Yeah, let's go listen to it make some noise.